Rhode Island House of Representatives Committee on Education. Today is Wednesday, April 28th, 2020. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Yes, Chairman.
Here.
First Vice Chair Barrows. Second Vice Chair Amore. Representative Alzate.
Here.
Representative Beer.
Here.
Representative Caldwell.
Present.
Representative Donovan.
Present.
Representative Fenton Fung. Representative Giraldo.
Here.
Representative Kislak.
Here.
Representative Norrie. Representative Phillips.
Here.
Representative Ranglin Vassell. Representative Roberts.
Present.
Representative Shallcross Smith. We have a quorum, Chairman.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This afternoon, we have one bill to consider. It is a bill that we heard committee testimony on the 7th of April by Representative Ackerman, House Bill 5491. And this act would require the Council on Elementary and Secondary Education, in consultation with the Department of Education, to develop and approve statewide academic standards for instruction and consumer education in public schools no later than December 31st, 2021. And it is a bill that was worked on by the General Treasurer and many educators for, I believe this could be the third year. And they have, Representative Ackerman has worked with addressing the issues that prevented it from being passed before. But the big difference between this and a bill that was not as strong is seen on page 2, lines 13 through 15, where it states, beginning with the class of 2024, all students will demonstrate proficiency in consumer education prior to graduating from high school. And I like it because it is enabling and that it gives discretion to the local school departments to demonstrate that proficiency. It could be the completion of a consumer education course, a project aligned with the standards developed and approved by the council, successful completion of consumer education assessments in alignment with standards. So it's very comprehensive, and it also will develop a list of micro-credentialing programs necessary to deliver consumer education. So it's comprehensive. It really means that kids that graduate from high school will have a demonstrable knowledge of consumer education. Is there any discussion? No discussion? In that case, I will recommend passage for House Bill 5491. Is there a second? Second by Representative Donovan, and it looks like members of the entire committee. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Chairman McNamara.
Yes.
Representative Barrows. Representative Amore. Representative Alzate.
Yes.
Representative Beer. Yes. Representative Caldwell.
Yes.
Representative Donovan.
Yes.
Representative Fenton Fung. Representative Giraldo.
Yes.
Representative Kislak.
Yes.
Representative Norrie. Representative Phillips.
Yes.
Representative Ranglin Vassell. Representative Roberts.
Yes.
Representative Shallcross Smith.
Yes.
We have 10 in favor, Chairman.
Thank you. That bill will be forwarded to the floor. At this time, we have two more bills that we're going to hear, House Bill 5933 and 5936. I am going to make a motion to hold these for further study to keep them alive within the bar of the committee. So I will make that motion to hold 5933 and 5936. Second by Representative Phillips. All those in favor, please take the roll.
Yes. Chairman McNamara.
Yes.
Representative Barrows. Representative Amore. Representative Alzate.
Yes.
Representative Bia. Representative Caldwell.
Yes.
Representative Donovan.
Yes.
Representative Fenton Fung. Representative Giraldo.
Yes.
Representative Kislak.
Yes.
Representative Norrie. Representative Phillips.
Yes.
Representative Rangland Vassell. Representative Roberts.
Yes.
Representative Shallcross Smith. We have 10 in favor, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. The first bill that we're going to hear is House Bill 5933 by Representative Rangland Vassell. This would require school districts to provide alternative programs and classroom space within the school to reduce the number of out-of-school suspensions. Students that pose a threat to a peer, teacher, administrator, support staff, or themselves would be placed in an alternative educational setting within the school with a RIDE-certified teacher. And Representative Norrie is here with us, present. Representative Norrie, would you like to be listed in the affirmative for the two votes that we've taken without objection?
Yes, please, sir, without objection. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So this is an alternative to suspension. Many call it in-school suspension. There's been many versions of this over the years. So with that, we have three witnesses that have called in, and the first one is Andrew Poignant. And they're all positive, so we'll go 2 minutes. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi, thank you. Is it possible to speak both on 5933 and 5936 at
Sure.
the same time now?
We'll give you
Great,
4
thank
minutes at this time. Absolutely.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Andrew Poya. I am in support of both 5933 and 5936. I'm a Providence resident, a father of 3 young children, and was a part of the community design team, which provided input on the Providence Public School District turnaround plan. Both of these bills will improve education equity outcomes in Providence and throughout the state. Out-of-school suspensions and involving law enforcement for issues that should be handled at the school level significantly reduces the likelihood that the child will graduate high school. We should be doing everything we can do to make sure that situations are handled at the school level and that children remain in school while doing that in order to increase the likelihood that they will stay in school and will be able to graduate. And there's plenty of studies that show that out-of-school suspensions have negative long-term impacts. Additionally, a child under stress and trauma is less able to learn and able to pay attention in class. Implementing trauma-informed practices in schools will have long-term positive impacts on our students. So I urge that the committee supports these bills and moves them forward to a full House vote this year. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Now, that's both bills, Andrew?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay,
I support both
it covers both,
5933
yep.
and 5936.
Well, are
Yep.
there any questions for Andrew? Thank you very much for your testimony, Andrew. Next, we have Paige Clausius Parks. Paige, welcome.
Hello.
Please proceed.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Rhode Island Kids Count would like to voice support for House Bill 5933. We also want to thank Representative Rangel Vassell and all the co-sponsors for their leadership on this bill. Effective school disciplinary practices promote a safe and respectful school climate, support learning, and address the causes of student misbehavior. Suspensions usually do not deter students from exhibiting negative behaviors and may actually reinforce those negative behavior patterns. And suspended students are more likely than their peers to experience academic failure, juvenile justice system involvement, disengagement from school, and isolation from their teachers and peers, and ultimately more likely to drop out of school. We know that this committee, the General Assembly, RIDE, and some individual school districts have really done a lot of work to try to reduce out-of-school suspensions and to encourage the use of alternative disciplinary practices. However, we know there is still much work to do. And my written testimony includes a chart that shows in the 2018-2019 school year the number of suspensions for nonviolent offenses that occurred. So there was more than 21,500 suspensions, 46% of them being out of school. More than half of those out-of-school suspensions, again, for nonviolent offenses. We also know that there are large disparities in who receives these out-of-school suspensions, disparities by special education status and by race and ethnicity. And also, tragically, looking at the suspensions in early grades. So of all disciplinary actions during the 18-19 school year, 15% involved our elementary school students. 74% of those were out-of-school suspensions. And then our kindergartners, 133 disciplinary actions, 110 of them were out-of-school suspensions. So there is a great need to try to deter the practice of out-of-school suspensions and to provide positive, alternative ways of addressing student challenging behaviors. We know that suspensions are more likely when teachers believe that they don't have the resources. So we urge the passing of this bill. Thank you so much.
Paige, would you like, seeing that you're on, to testify on 5936 as well?
Sure, absolutely. So we also support 5936. Nationally in the United States, we know there are many children, 35 million, who are experiencing at least one traumatic event in their life. Those traumatic events can include witnessing violence, experiencing abuse, experiencing the loss of a loved one. In Rhode Island, 1 in 5 of our kids between the ages of 6 and 17 have a diagnosable mental health condition, and 1 in 10 have a significant impairment. We support this bill because this bill would help students by increasing schools' ability to recognize those signs of distress, to identify trauma, and then appropriately address those behaviors that are rooted in trauma. As you say, they're very clearly connected to practices for disciplinary practices that I just testified on. Adverse childhood experiences, toxic stress can be experienced by any child at any point of their life. So it's really important for schools to be equipped to meet the mental health and emotional needs of students and to not perpetuate or introduce new traumas. We're really encouraged by the Trauma-Informed Schools Act because it creates a universal approach designed to help students who have experienced trauma, and it also benefits all children by creating positive school climates. We urge the passing of this bill, and thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony. I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you, Paige. Are there any questions for Paige? Thank you very much for your testimony, Paige. It's always a pleasure.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the hearing on 5933. The next, do we have any written testimony?
We do, Chairman. We have 4 pieces of written testimony so far, and there might be more coming in. But there is no opposition to it. Stephanie Muse from the Safe Return to School Rhode Island and a 4th grade teacher is in support. James Parisi from the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals is in support. Paige Clausius Parks, who we just heard from Kids Count, is in support. And Hannah Stern from the ACLU is in support with some concerns, though. And that's all we have so far.
Okay. And speaking of perfect timing, we are being joined by Representative Ranglin Vassell for introducing House Bill 5936. And without objection, Representative Ranglin Vassell, would you like to be considered in the affirmative on item number 1 and the vote to hold for further study? And Representative Fenton Fung has also joined us. Representative Fenton Fung, what is your pleasure? Would you like to be in the affirmative on 1 and to hold for further study?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, without objection. And with that, we'll give Representative Ranglin Vassell a minute to get settled. She just ran all the way from school and looks as cool as a cucumber, so, very good. Representative Ranglin Vassell, are you ready to begin? And if you want, we just concluded on 5936. We heard from a couple of witnesses, all supportive of that. So, and the ACLU had a question, and we were unable to get them by phone. So we've moved on to, if you'd like to say a few words on that, and then go on to 5936. Uh, 5936 is the trauma-informed practice in schools throughout the state. And two of the witnesses, we have several witnesses here, already testified in support of that, Andrew Poyant and Paige Clausius-Parks from Kids Count. So you've got a head start in support.
I am so very aware of trauma that our students encounter and their families. And as a person who have lived in trauma all my life, growing up in poverty, growing up in gun violence, and I know the impact of trauma. I know what it does to the body, the mind. I know what it feels like. I know what it looks like. And so seeing our children go through this every day and expecting them to function as if nothing is wrong really troubles me. And one of the things that I try to do, and one of the reasons that I am here today, is because I had teachers who cared for me and loved me and taught me how to be resilient. And so that is something I bring to my students every day. And a trauma-informed bill and legislation, I think, would help. It's also something, a bill that Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley has introduced at the national level as well. So, you know, it's something that I've been working on for the last 5 years. And so I just want to read a little from my prepared testimony. Because oftentimes when we think of trauma, we think that it occurs only in impoverished neighborhoods and children who experience hunger or gun violence, but that's actually a myth. Trauma is experienced by any of us in this room. And so for children who may face sexual assault, they may face or exposed to divorce, poverty, racism, childhood neglect or abuse, or a combination, we see these children being traumatized. And so when we see our kids come into school and they bring with them their backpacks, I also want all of us and our teachers to be reminded that they bring the trauma with them. I thought that when I got on the plane and came to the USA with my suitcase, I was leaving the trauma behind. Little did I know that I was bringing it with me, only to be compounded by everything else. So this bill seeks to create trauma-informed practices for teachers and other providers in our school. Trauma and toxic stress is real. So many of our kids live toxic lives. I think it's critical that teachers and other school personnel understand the adverse implications of trauma in young minds, and all of us should work to learning what it is, but also how we can address it. I think it's also important, more than ever, that we should provide more mental health services, more counselors in schools as opposed to cops. At a time when our children, and especially Black children, are experiencing the realities of Black people and Black men getting shot and killed on TV, and they're exposed to that, and it adds more trauma and more toxic stress, and they go to school, and we expect them to operate and to function like nothing happened. We expect them to learn how to write essays and how to do math and science. And I think it's important that teachers and all of us who educate these young people understand that these children are traumatized, and we must address it. We must act urgently and intentionally in our efforts to protect children's mental health and their well-being. I would like to share with you two things that really stuck with me over the last, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, two things that stuck with me and really pained me and has kept me up at night. Was 2 weeks ago I went to work, and there was a young man that was not there, and I always check in to see who is here, who is not. And if they're not there, I pick up my phone and I call them, because I have all their numbers and their mom's numbers and their caregivers' numbers. And I called this mom and I said, you know, I don't see your son in school. I say his name, but for this I won't. And she starts crying. And I'm like, what happened? Tell me. Because he wasn't here last week, I was told, and I'm back this week and he's not here. And she said his uncle was shot and he had surgery and he's in the hospital. And we expect him to operate in a space of teaching and learning. And so I wanted to bring that to our attention. That's trauma. Last Saturday, I was walking my grandson, one street over from my house, and I saw this boy, he's 10, and I said, what happened? How you doing? And I engaged, because that's what I do. And he said, and I'm going to wrap it up and paraphrase in the interest of time, but he said, I said, my name is Miss Ranglin Vassell. I teach at E-Cubed. Where do you go? He goes to VZ. I said, who's your principal? We just opened a food pantry in your school. I took out my phone and I showed him the food that we had in the pantry. So if he got hungry, he could have something to eat. Anyway, this little 10-year-old boy, beautiful boy, looks at me unsolicited, and he said, I miss my dad. This was last week. And I said, what happened to your dad? And he said he was shot and killed, and we have the urn with his ashes in our house. We're still talking about trauma, and we're still talking about the bill and how this bill could really inform teachers and caregivers and other providers in the school how to really address these very hard issues. And for teachers who don't understand or do not live traumatic lives, and there's no fault here. Some of us just born with traumatic lives and stressful lives, right? It's poverty. And so we want to make sure that teachers have the resources and the skill sets and everything that they need to take care of these children, not just to teach them, but to really take care of them. Someone sent this to me, and I wanted to just read before I wrap this part up. It's an article by Adam Harris, and the topic is the burden of being on point. Too often traumatized Black boys' behavior. It's actually rational how they operate. So we should not just be looking at the pathology, we must be looking at the humanity of Black boys. And I'm going to read directly from this. Social workers and educators who see young people, especially Black boys who live in poor, segregated neighborhoods, react aggressively, become irritable, or have trouble concentrating, often identify such behaviors as maladaptive. But new research led by Naomi Galen Harden, a clinical psychologist at Texas A&M University, proposes that the young people's behavior is a rational response to their environment, and it actually helps to keep them safe. I'm just going to say that again. It's actually a rational response to their environment, and it keeps them safe. Her findings suggest that instead of focusing on these behaviors, teachers, and identifying them as pathologies to be punished or symptoms to be treated, policymakers need to recognize them as adaptive and work to change the inequitable environment that produces them. So that, and I urge this committee to really pass this bill out and get it to
We
the
do
floor.
have several witnesses.
All right, so I am going to, because I want to hear from the witnesses.
Okay.
But I wanted to provide a context for the witnesses. And I won't go into the other bill too, because I just present them
Okay.
simultaneously, to end out-of-school suspensions. It's a bill that I've offered up since 2017. And what that does is, because the data shows us that Black boys, brown boys, and students receiving special education services, they are disproportionately given out-of-school suspension, which really adds to the prison complex. And so we want to make sure that we are not criminalizing more of our children, and especially now with the impact of COVID. So I'm just grateful that we're able to present these bills, and I'm grateful for the amazing people who will testify on this behalf. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, Representative Donovan.
Thank you, Representative. Ranglin Vassell. I don't have a question, but I do have a comment.
Yeah.
A bill like this is so needed. I taught for 35 years in suburbia, and and it's not as diverse as where you teach, Representative, but the trauma is there. It's everywhere, and like you said, it knows no socio or economic bounds. And I'm not going to sit here and go through the examples because they are just too many and they're too sad. But I will remark that the males, the young boys, respond very differently to trauma than the young girls in most cases, and a lot of that is treated as you said maladaptive behavior, and they're adapting to their trauma. So yes, I'm really thankful that you did this and more. And a lot of the teachers they're more apt to punish instead of refer.
Yeah.
Thank you for this, and I hope we can have a larger conversation
And we
about
do have, are there any other questions for, yes, Representative Fenton Fung?
Thank you, Rep. It's a wonderful, like as everyone else has said, it's a wonderful concept and everything. There's a lot in this bill, too. It could almost be 3 different bills. To be honest, it would actually be better that way. My only, and I'll say this, my big concern, because I don't like doing this to school districts, there's no funding mechanism in this like other bills we've heard, and I don't like putting kind of, unfunded liabilities and unfunded mandates on different school districts. These are expensive programs to do well, and it's so important you do them well.
Yeah.
So I think it really needs to have kind of a funding funnel and mechanism to it as other bills have. So that would be my only thing. But also, if we could almost separate out the trauma versus the bias versus the punishment, those really could be three different concepts, and I think it would make it stronger.
Yeah, Representative, I could not agree with you anymore. I really appreciate every single thing that you said, and we could work together to build and to make this better. But I also want to say that we're getting a lot of money in this state. And we have to decide what the priorities are. And a lot of time, we say we love our children, and I would never question that. But our word and our rhetoric has to align with what we do. And this investing in our children and making sure that they're ready to learn when they enter our classrooms by providing those resources, that's a policy decision, and it's a policy decision that we in the General Assembly can actually make. But we have to want to do that. We have to want to invest in poor children and children who everything, you could say from birth, is stacked up against them. But really and truly, it doesn't have to be that way. We can begin right now to change the trajectory of children and families' lives if we really invest in our children. And we send them to school, and we want them to get really high scores on SATs and PSATs, and we really want them to go off to college, and every parent wants the best for their children. I do not, and this is my belief, just having been in practice, right, every single day. I'm late today because I'm coming from school. We have to make sure that we're taking care of their minds, and especially during this pandemic where kids are facing so much that they're not even telling us about. Of course, the boy that I referenced in my earlier remarks, I referred him to our part-time school counselor. Part-time. And he was able to see her yesterday, not the day before, because she wasn't there. She was at another school. So these are policy decisions that we make, and I so appreciate what you just said, and I would love us to work together on this. So thank you so much.
We do have several witnesses. If we hear them now, we may not have to come back after we adjourn. So with that, I'm going to ask David Velez. Is he on? Welcome, David. You have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson and members of the committee. Good afternoon. My name is David Belize. I want to show my support for House Bill 5936. Many of you know me as an advocate and as an activist, and maybe even as a friend. But I'm here today as myself as a trauma survivor. As you will hear from many people tonight, trauma has a devastating effect on children as it did in my life. It impacts your ability to learn, to process information, to connect with people, form, maintain relationships, and all the other parts of your life. Even after a lifetime of treatment and exploration, I am still dealing with the effects of trauma. I only wish that I had more support as a child to process and heal. It wasn't until I became a crisis counselor myself, helping others process traumatic events, that I came to learn about the necessity of having trauma-informed care. I only wish that I've had this throughout my education. Having teachers and administrators be conscious of a possible traumatic event in a child's life can help them take care of children better, help children avoid re-traumatization. Trauma-informed care basically helps you think about other people's possible experiences and helps you be careful not to hurt someone who's already been hurt. For someone who experiences trauma, actions and situations may be normal, that may be normal to others, become dangerous and threatening. Trauma-informed care makes us better educators, better caretakers, and better human beings. My hope is that one day we will all care for each other a little better. Thank you to Representative Ranglin Vassell and for everyone else who signed on to this bill. And thank you all for letting me speak, and have a good day.
Thank you, David. Next, we have Elizabeth. Are there any questions for David? Elizabeth Salenda. Welcome, Elizabeth. You have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
All right, thank you. I am calling in to testify in wholehearted favor of this bill. And I know that it's still in the committee stage, but I wanted to name a couple reasons why. I've been doing trauma-informed practices for about 8 years. I started as a psychiatric residential treatment facility caregiver for teenage girls and worked for about a year in a school outside of Boston. And in both of those settings, I found that trauma-informed practices were totally essential to actually earning the trust of the students and young people I worked with. And in this day and age where trauma sort of seeps into the classroom in ways that we might not anticipate, I can't think of another way to do education in the state of Rhode Island. So I'm really excited to hear that this is on the docket, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it pass. And I'm going to yield the rest of my time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Are there any questions for Elizabeth? And Representative Amore has been with us waiting very patiently. And Representative Amore, would you like to be recorded?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to be recorded in the affirmative on the first item and to hold the second two items. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Amore, without objection. The next witness, Robert Marshall. Welcome, Mr. Marshall. Please proceed. Welcome, Mr. Marshall. You have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman McNamara and members of the committee. I will be very brief. I'm here on behalf of the Rhode Island Developmental Disabilities Council. Trauma-informed care is something that we've been working on for quite some time with the goal of trying to get to all 39 communities in Rhode Island having trauma-informed practices. We think that this bill is a good step in that direction, and to have all of the schools doing it as they start, and we can continue working on other practitioners that need to also be using these practices. And thank you for your time. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Are there any questions for Mr. Marshall? Thank you. And do we have any written testimony? Representative Phillips.
We do, Chairman. We have 9 pieces of testimony, all in support of this bill. Mr. Marshall that just spoke is in support of it. Laurie Marie Pisciotta is from the Mental Health Association of Rhode Island, is in favor of it. David Angel is in favor of it. Stephanie Muse from Safe Return to School RI and a 4th grade teacher is in support. Darlene Allen from Adoption Rhode Island is in support. Jordan Goyette is in support. Hannah Stern from the ACLU is in support. Paige Clausius Parks is from Rhode Island Kids Count is in support. And the last one is LaJuan Allen from the City of Providence is in support.
Thank you, Representative Phillips. And with that, I would like to thank Vice Chair Amore of East Providence for spending time with us today. Representative Alzate from the great city of Pawtucket, thank you very much. Representative Nathan Bai, principal, who came in today with a big smile, as I did, with a wonderful story of his nephew on the front page of the Providence Journal. And as a former All-State football player, I am just totally thrilled that it looks like his nephew will be drafted in the first round of the NFL. And man, he is good. So the whole state, everyone has got to be, I know, we're both thrilled. Representative Caldwell, thank you very much from East Greenwich. Representative Donovan from Bristol, she's getting things ready for the 4th of July parade. We're pleased that that's going on. Representative Fenton Fung from Cranston, and she's getting ready for the Gatsby Day Parade this year. Absolutely. Yep. It's all quality territory. It is. It's great. Representative Giraldo from Central Falls, thank you very much. Representative Kislak from the fashionable east side of Providence, thank you. Representative Norrie is with us today. Representative Norrie, are you back to 100%? I know that, did you have something go on during vacation? Oh, you wasn't? Oh, I thought someone said that you were, okay.
I'm always 100%.
Always 100%, very good. And thank you for sharing the Norrie litter pickup pictures with me. Very impressive, especially this month with all the Earth Day activity. Representative Phillips of Woonsocket and a little bit of Cumberland. And Representative Ranglin Vassell of the capital city of Providence. Representative Roberts was with us all the way from Coventry and a little bit of West Greenwich. And last but far from least, our champion of early childhood education, known as Dr. Daycare, Representative Showcroft Smith. Thank you very much. At this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Seconded. Thank you. The Rhode Island House of Representatives Committee on Education is adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.